Hey, this is Shanshan. I sell art on shanshan.co. Today we're going to review Devotion. So this is a film of the naval pilots that went to the Korean War obviously, and the kind of the backstory of how they came together as a team and then trained and then later went on this mission that ended up with a tragic death of one of their co-pilots. I really like the costume sets, ships. I think they did a really great job there. There was a little bit of CGI, I think, on some of the battleships and the battle scenery. I wasn't sure if they were using real footage or maybe they had CGI'd it in, but obviously they're not going to pull out battleships from Korea. They're probably all retired and not even floating, so to say. I think there's a floating Navy outside of San Francisco, but a lot of those are mothballed and just really aren't seaworthy at this point, so they just had probably one or two to kind of sample it out. They had to have the aircraft carrier and some of the planes. It was interesting too how they developed through the plot when they're training this black pilot. He feels really confident, Brown, on this one airplane, and then they upgrade them, and then he doesn't feel confident anymore in his ability. And so that's kind of interesting that they have that contrast to the film. Another point I liked was they had a little bit of the stereotypes of the era of, the racism and all that background, which would have been pretty thick in the, the 50s. It would have been pretty thick. That was just right after World War II, and they kind of integrated the forces and World War II. And so they're a little more integrated here in 1950, but still a lot of hoops and hurdles that, pilots breaking kind of that glass ceiling. They really had to break through. And you get a little bit of that backstory of him and kind of how his family's a little bit harassed by the police and all that kind of stuff, but in a subtle form that's, tasteful. So it's not so discouraging for the youth, but it probably would have been a little thicker than what they probably would have faced in reality. But I think it was tasteful for the film. There's a great contrast too. They make one of the ports, they stop off in Cannes and they get to meet Liz Taylor. So that's really cool. And I like the contrast between the casino scenes and France, and then later on, obviously, the battle scenes in North Korea. It makes for a very strong contrast. So I really like that. That really added a lot of taste to it. Great love story between Brown and his wife. They're very devoted, have a small family with all the obviously typical 50s decoration of the house and the way the dresses and the way he's dressed and all that. So that's really cool. And you can see kind of this budding relationship between some of the black pilot and a few of his other pilots. At first they're kind of reluctant, and they kind of, slowly bond through all the training. And then of course through the battles, they're really tight. So it's a really interesting kind of development you can see there. But at the same time, you have some of the other forces that are in the Army. You always have an Army versus Navy. They dislike each other in the forces until they go to war. So you have a little bit of that, but it's also a little bit of racism sprinkled in there. So that was kind of interesting as well. It was also bizarre a little bit that the pilot doesn't drink at all, and all the other pilots obviously drink heavy. So it's a little bit strange there that he doesn't drink, but it's kind of an interesting contrast. They never really explain it in the film, whether maybe he's Muslim or maybe it's just a personal belief, or maybe his dad was an alcoholic, so now he doesn't drink. They didn't really explain that, so that would have been a little bit nice to see. I think it's a really great film. I would highly recommend it. A little bit slow going pace, I would say. Hopefully you guys like my review. If you like to subscribe, you can subscribe below. And I'll see you in the next movie review. Thanks for watching, guys.